So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the last day of this excellent series of events that have been organized here in Brno. And for me personally, it was a great opportunity and pleasure to be here for the second time in this fantastic city. And I would like already to thank the organizers for working so hard to have organized such an interesting international conference, where many things have been discussed over the last 2 days. And among those, and what we have just heard, is data is one of the main issues that has been addressed, I think, in all plenary and parallel sessions. And it's very clear that we are now in digitalization of the society, and data play an important role. So some of the information that we have seen all over, the analysis that we have done, is that the volume of data is expected to increase in the next years by 530%. And concerning the research activities, a terabyte of data are generated by researchers and research infrastructures around the world. So why data are important? Why we discussed the last 2 days about data, about access to data, about use of data and reuse of data. From the European Commission side, we felt that we had to express ourselves and to publish a communication in 2020 about the European data strategy. I identified a number of different thematic data sets, 9 data spaces, and a 10th one, a cross-cutting one, the European Open Science Cloud, where we had the vision, and we still have the vision, and Karel will say a lot about that today, to develop a cloud where research data, they could be assessed, they should be organized in a fair way at international level, and that will be able also to be reused. But the question for me is, why we think that we have to go more for open data, why we think in the research communities and research institutes have to do more about data. So, what we have heard today is that in the pandemic, access to data and open access to publication was very important. We heard about environmental challenges and how data will help scientists to reply to in the disciplinary way to questions and to provide solutions. And we heard a lot about the challenges we have about data, technological challenges, challenges in relation to the governance, challenges in relation to interoperability. So, but I think we have great speakers with us today, that they could say much more than me, and I have a very interesting question to all of them. So I have the pleasure, first of all, to invite to the panel the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Ivan BARTOŠ, Deputy Prime Minister for Digitalisation and Minister for Regional Development in the government of the Czech Republic. Dear Prime Minister, the floor is yours. I suppose we haven't prepared very well this panel, so please, very happy to have with you. You can sit maybe in the middle. Then Karel LUYBEN already reported on one of the parallel sessions that we have, President of the European Open Science Cloud Association. Karel, very happy to have you with us today. Émilie PAQUIN, the Director of Research and Strategic Development, Université de Montréal. Bonjour, good morning. And then the next one is the most challenging for me, and if I pronounce it wrongly, please forgive me. Is Piyawut? Is it Piyawut SRICHAIKUL? More or less. ASEAN HPC Task Force and co-chair and Director of National Science and Technology Development Agency Supercomputing Center in Thailand. I'm sorry for that. And Tommaso Calarco, the Director of the Institute of Quantum Control at Forschungszentrum Jülich. Where is he? Just arrived, just on time. Good morning. So, before we start with the questions, I would like to ask the dear Deputy Prime Minister for a keynote speech on the subject matter.
So I'll try the
yes,
speaker's place.
Please.
Speaker's corner. No way. Hello, everybody. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, friends, researchers, all the stakeholders that are important and relevant to stuff that were discussed here last days and that will be also matter of our discussion today. I'm honored, no doubt, to be here, and especially in the panel on the data and digitalization of society. I will just mention a few reasons. Why is that? Because information society, the transformation that started somewhere in 1970s in US, defined as the third wave, already reached its top, and the society did change over last years, and but we didn't change that much as we can. And through the digital and green transformation, there is a unique opportunity to fulfill the goals of this information society transformation. Because it's almost over, and that's the main part we will be talking about here today, we are turning to knowledge society. There is plenty of data already produced. We completely, almost, not completely, moved from that this is a data that means and I store it and I keep it and I don't share it and I don't reuse it because it's mine asset, to let's share the data, and it was important thing mentioned here this morning, which says, in particular cases, if we are not pure business, collaboration and cooperation gives us better results in ruling the society than the competition. That's why I'm honored to be here, because in my political career, all them things that I believe to and we were facing already merge, and it's supported worldwide, it's supported by European Union, European Commission, and let's say those enlightened politicians of this area, and I think this is the time we can deliver the change for the benefit of us all. When we discuss the data, we often focus on the regulation. But in the matter of fact, the regulation is not something that it's particularly wrong to regulate. When we talk regulation, especially in this area of the research data and the public institution and academic institution, we talk more about the standards, about the way how we share the data, how we standardize the formats so we can compare, analyze, aggregate, and turn that information that is all the way around into the knowledge, and knowledge into the action, which makes the difference, which we found during the COVID, and more often we know this is the key benefit for dealing with the crisis and moving society forward. That is also why the European Commission came with a strategy with the data for 2 years, and it's gradually working on fair economy and data-driven society. Again, one thing we always thought about, there is always a little bit of a politics into the decisions that we make. But in current society, we need to have a cost and benefit analysis of the steps we are taking. We need to just not to focus on, let's say, gross national product, but see how it affects the well-being of the society. What are the other measures that are effective to the society when we make a change, when we implement legislation, when we make a strategic investment decision. It's the same in the business and it's the same on the state level. So we need gradually work on this, let's say, data-driven economy, data-driven policy making. And I hope, and we, I believe, all hope that potential of the data that is shared and utilized is one of the priority we shall focus on, because then we can benefit from it all together. And that's also why we make it as one of our priorities for the Czech presidency in the Telecommunication Council, and we are trying, through the discussion and negotiation, push Data Act as far as possible, because that's the thing that strongly affects the politics. Also, and it's important, it was already mentioned here, we dedicated our focus on the Artificial Intelligence Act. Although we are often unaware of it, and when I talk to public, even to young people, they do not understand that many of apps that we currently have in our cell phone is already using AI, Spotify preferences of the songs, face recognition while logging to our systems, etc. And the real AI that is useful to the society in a safe environment, not to be hacked, not to be modified, not to be abused, is a very important, and the data sets that we will be feeding this artificial intelligence to calculate use cases from the medicines to whatever Green Deal delivery, saving the water, smart energy grids, it's based on that we had amount of data that's trustworthy, that's standardized, and then we can feed artificial intelligence to make those very important decisions we cannot do in our brains, just observing high-level business intelligence graphs of few KPIs, because the world is complex and the very much we are connected, the small change in one side of the world, even though in the good manner, can affect the path of entire society. We also need to focus to have the quality of the data standardized. In the state government, in the public institutions, we do have a massive data sets already collected just by the everyday business as it goes. But the data is incomplete. The data is sometimes wrong. It's not updated, right? It's diverse. There are things, and if we want to base our decision making and research and everything above that, it's the most important part is to have data in order. That's why we have to invest in the data capabilities of the institution, individual states, and also on the European level, because we do cooperate as a European Union, not compete as an individual state in this particular matter. And the goal is also to create sufficient infrastructure to do that, because we process the data, and it was mentioned here, of unbelievable amount that we cannot imagine in the history. So that's we also need to share our resources. And I'm very grateful for all the projects and foundings that are coming on the EU level, helping individual states to connect to, let's say, the network of open access data available to public and research, because that does matter. And then we can focus on the data centers that we can calculate things for Green Deal, smart communities, mobility, agriculture, healthcare, financial sector, you name it. And those data centers and that infrastructure will be a significant part for the next decade of entire digital transformation ecosystem, where all of the participants or stakeholders, starting from the individuals, going to the cities, municipalities, region, governments, researchers, universities, but also a business segment will contribute from. Why I'm mentioning the business segment, it showed us, and I mentioned it yesterday on my initial speech in the, let's say, evening or the meeting that we had in this beautiful place over there with the music, that the cooperation of those segments, and including NGOs, showed us during the COVID that this is the key, and we can learn from each other, and we shall be able to share also the data that's coming into the system because of its nature, coming from different processes. Last month, Czech Republic, and I move home a little bit, even though I talk the European level, Czech Republic finally implemented the Open Data Directive from 2019. It broadens the scales of obliged entities, supports the provisioning of information in data in such a way as to facilitate their reuse as much as possible, introduces so-called standard conditions to use, which must be respected by obliged entity when providing information. Again, we are still setting up the ecosystem for the future decision-making, for the future benefit. And one of them parts, and when we were talking about it 20 years ago, it's an open data. And why I'm saying that, and we are in Brno, which is significant city, not because ICRI is here and university is here, but the municipality also made a difference in how to collect, standardize, and provide the data on a web page, brno.data, where there are various data sets, and there'll be more in the future. And then we can see how different applications by whatever entity, from like young people who are enthusiastic on particular matters such as transportation, or green places in the city could be used, and entire logic, business applications and services for the citizens, because those are in the center of our doing on the European level. Not just their data and protect them, but the services to most valuable customer, which is a citizen of state, which is a citizen of EU, and who is the citizen of Brno as well, that they can benefit out of it. In a user-friendly format, data can be used for future research. And of course, I see without the research, not only the one that already is towards some practical use, but also the research that invents, that opens new fields, the open data for the research and universities, and sharing up-to-date, not the historically gray literature and white literature, whatever non-published papers, but the real data from the exam. It's the key benefit also, not only for the universities, but in the ecosystem of this cooperation for entire society. We support the initiative European Open Science Cloud, which aims to develop web of fair data and services for science in Europe, because then we can be competitive. Europe can go forward, we can deal with the crisis, and will be stronger and more resilient in the future. And since I met a lot of people here yesterday and today, the data is a layer, then even the knowledge over that is a layer. But the data that is in the system that we will build our knowledge base above is a shared good to us. It's multidisciplinary. I'm representing politicians here of the Czech government. There are people from universities, rectors, world leaders of the business entities, but also of big scientific programs. And that's a common ground, because data, if it's correct, they don't lie. We shall end up with same results, or with the results we all can use in our particular field of occupation. And that's what I feel, it's a unique moment of the history. Maybe we are a little bit late, but we will catch up, and with common approach to that, which I believe and will be seen from our discussion here, that's the key to success. So thank you again. I hope you enjoy what happened before, and I hope you also enjoy our discussion today. Thank you.
Excellent. Many thanks. Dear Prime Minister, I think we have to invite you in Brussels to give an exciting speech, because you are a great ambassador of open science.
I sometimes happens to me, I'm in Brussels or Luxembourg, but
did you ever have a talk about open science in Brussels?
I'm in charge just for 9 months, right?
Okay.
I'm participating or like I'm in telco, I'm in regional development and cohesion, right? So there are a lot of things to do. It's hard to participate all of it. So we are sending a messages, recording this maybe keynote speech. I'll be happy though, but
of course.
Politicians, they also deal with this operation of everyday life, like, you know, prices of energy. So it's hard to...
You cannot promise, but probably we can benefit of your presence.
Maybe when presidency is over, but I don't know if it still would be, when it still would be, okay, he's not chair anymore, so does it still have a... No, I mean, I'll be happy, but there are certain constraints, as we say in the database, which basically is a place and time currently.
Anyway, I think your keynote speech was excellent for this international conference, because you highlighted the importance of open science and open data. And you are a very good advocate about what we do at European level as well. And I really appreciate, which I think and I hope you believe is important also for national level and regional level.
Okay, I should be like not related to the political party I'm representing, but in matter of fact, I'm melancholic a little bit, but where we moved and Europe moved, especially towards accessibility of the data, open source, open archive initiatives, and let's say revealing the data that was historically, I mean, I have the power because I keep data insecure. I'm always for more transparency in the processes, that's one thing. But the data as a result, as a common background, it's the thing I was dreaming when I started to dream of pirates and whatever, Rick Stallman and all the important ambassadors of the open society, open access, digital commons and all of that. And especially with the privacy measures, I'm living my dream in what's on the top of the discussion on the European level, on the worldwide level, that there is a person whose privacy is important, and there is a knowledge that we can share to be better. And this is basically what I studied on my information science on Charles University. That's why I entered the politics, and that's what I believe. So basically, I'm so happy that I'm living in that particular time, even the crisis, even the war, because this is what matters in information and knowledge society, which is the current level of evolution. And it's really tied also with executing our democratic rights, because information and informed citizen is the one who can, by himself, make the right decision on the very end. And this is the fundamental for keeping the democratic values worldwide, not only in Europe.
Excellent. Thank you very much. You said you are new anyway. You have the background that allows you really to be excellent in providing key messages. But let's go to the next speaker. So, Karel, you are not a new one. You have been working with us for some years on the European Open Science Cloud. What we need to do more? What are the expected benefits for the scientific communities?
And I have 7 minutes for that. Let me start with my dream. My dream is as follows. If I plug into Google the Delft University of Technology where I work, I get 35 million hits within a second, finding the Delft University and everything I want to know about it. If I plug in the location we are today into Google Maps, I get the location immediately here in Brno Hotel Passage, and I even get a button to find the directions to get here. Now, I've been working on the drying of gelatin in the past, and if I plug in a data set on drying of gelatin, I of course get results from Google. They always give results. And the first one is a Nature paper, so looks promising. I look at the paper. The paper is open access. That's great. The paper has data. It has a data set with it. Unfortunately, the data set is in a Word file. But okay, I can convert a Word file to an Excel sheet, so I can use the data. However, there's no metadata, so I cannot use the data. I don't know what the data is about. There's beautiful graphs in this article, and I can measure them with a lineal, like I did as a student when I was young, but I don't think this is the way to get the data across. Wouldn't it be great if we all could find relevant data sets for our work as easy through the web of fair data as we can find many things through an adequate search engine today? And I just gave you a few examples. This is what's called by Ursula von der Leyen in her Davos lecture a web of scientific insight. It's what we call a web of fair data, a worldwide web of fair data, you could say, and the related services to those data. It's a federation of relevant, existing, and future data sources, a virtual space where science producers and science consumers come together, open-ended in range, like the World Wide Web, with respect to content and with respect to the services we can offer, meeting all the European data requirements, and of course, in interaction with the rest of the world. It's of no use doing this for Europe alone. What are the guiding principles for EOSC? The overarching guiding principle is that we do this for research. A lot of people say we do this for the researchers. I say no, we do this for research, and that benefits the researchers. It's about the process. This process is at the center of this initiative. It's multi-stakeholder, means research performing, research funding, and service providing organizations come together as stakeholders. It's open as possible and as restricted as necessary. It should also be able to handle sensitive data, private data, safety relevant data. And it's absolutely based on what we call the FAIR principles. Those 15 principles are at the bottom of this because they will help to make it interoperable. It's a federation of infrastructures, as I said just a minute ago, as well upcoming as existing, as well data as e-infrastructures that need to be combined. And last, but definitely not least, it is machine actionable. This is not going to work if we have to find the data by hand and have to write it on a piece of paper. The machine has to be able to find the data. The machine must know what is able to do with this data, and the machine must know, based on the metadata, what it can do, this machine, with this data. What is the position of EOSC according to the Commission? You heard it already from Anna just a minute ago. They see EOSC as a cross-cutting data space for research and innovation, underlying the data spaces that will come for the different domains like health, industry, agriculture, and so forth. So it's the basis with respect to the science research and innovation that will be covered by the European Open Science Cloud. This is based on a partnership. The partnership is between the Commission and the European Open Science Cloud Association that have signed an MOU, and there's a partnership board overlooking that MOU. On the one hand side, the association, on the other hand side, ANA, the DG Connect and DG RTD. This is the Commission part, and the Commission part, of course, is extended by the countries that together with the Commission form an expert group, the steering board, and this expert group is per definition invited in the partnership board, where we, let's say, discuss the development of this partnership. This is what we call the tripartite collaboration, the collaboration between the Commission, the association, the stakeholders, and the countries. Of course, as I said, on a global stage, service providers from different countries can already participate in EOSC. They can do so if they adhere to the rules of participation. They can participate if they adhere to the legislation here in Europe. EOSC will work together with all regional initiatives. There's a few organizations under here, but there are many more that work on worldwide, let's say, initiatives towards common goals for open science, driving the global convergence in all of that. Come back to my dream. Let's keep on dreaming. Wouldn't it be great if in 2040, 50% of the relevant research data, that means data, publications, software, and all the other digital outputs of research, would be as fair as possible? Then my dream would come true. But remember, it has to be done worldwide. Otherwise, it's of no use. So this is not an easy task, and therefore we need enough time to really work on that. If I say relevant research data, this is data found relevant by the researchers themselves. They have to decide what is relevant. And if I say as fair as possible, it means as fair as possible in 2040, when these principles have been further developed. If that would be the case, I would be able to find with a few clicks the diffusion coefficient of water as a function of temperature, as a function of the gelatin concentration, and I could, with my computer program, which I had 30 years ago, calculate the drying behavior of food materials in different machines. At that time, 15% of the world's energy went into drying. If we could have improved a few percent of those with those data sets, that would have improved the system enormously. So with that, I would like to make clear what the importance of developing this is. Thanks to EOSC. Let's go create.
Thank you very much, Karel. And thank you publicly for the excellent collaboration established in the context of EOSC. Before we move to the next speaker, I would like to ask you two, maybe one less provocative, one more provocative question. You spoke about 2040. The EOSC work started some years ago. How we will convince research infrastructures communities that they have to be part of it, and how we have convinced them that the dream of 2040 probably will have some intermediate steps, so that we cut the ribbon, as I always say, of the EOSC quite soon, with many of the participants of the communities that are around the table in Europe and even globally, because as you said, international cooperation is very important. And what we learned through the COVID crisis, in particular by putting in place the COVID-19 platform, the pilot EOSC, I would say.
It's not going to happen from one day to the other. It's already there in some disciplines. You mentioned the COVID platform. It's a good example of where we've proven that if we share data, we can do a lot and much faster, as I gave in my example, if I would have had a data set. It also showed that we could not combine the clinical data with the biological data at that time, clearly indicating where we have to improve. That's why my country invested 80 million euro for the next 7 years in doing that, sharing clinical data between the clinics. So this is a gradual process. The World Wide Web was not built overnight, and it's still growing. This is a web which is started and which will keep on growing. So don't wait till 2040, start today, and we can easily convince everybody the sooner they start, the sooner they will profit.
Great, thank you. And I'm sure that the pandemic demonstrated that only through open data, sharing data, and reuse of data, we will be able to address the challenges. Émilie, you're coming from the other side of the world. So what are your views? What are your work? And what would you like to contribute to this discussion today?
Do I say it here, or do I go up front?
As you wish. The choice
I
is
will
yours.
go up front.
Voilà.
Say my speech. Okay.
Good.
Okay, so hello everyone, good morning. And yes, I'm coming from another part of the world. I'm from Canada. It's my first ICRI conference, so I'm very pleased to be here to present Érudit.org, the infrastructure I've been working for since 2008. I will say a few words about Érudit, because I guess most of you don't know about it. So Érudit has been around since 1998. It's one out of the 19 national research infrastructure in Canada, and it's financed by the Canadian Foundation for Innovation, and it's the only national research infrastructures in humanities and social sciences. We are a non-commercial consortium of Canadian universities with a community-led governance body called Coalition Publica that we run with our closest partner, the Public Knowledge Project based in Vancouver, that is developing a heavily used publishing software called Open Journal Systems. Our mission is to widen access to knowledge and to support bibliodiversity. We provide services to HSS publishers, libraries, and of course to researchers. Our development and evolution are geared towards open access to publication, open source technological development, and of course to open science principles. That said, what is data in humanities and social sciences, research data? Well, it can be many things. Census data, survey data, audio recordings, magazines, books, of course, journal articles, and the list goes on. As long as, according to the definition of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, they are primary sources for scientific research recognized by the scientific community as necessary to validate research results. Now, Érudit provides access to two types of data. We are really text-centric infrastructure. So first, we provide access to scholarly journal articles, monographs, theses, and research reports published in French and English, and they are available in PDF and HTML, but also all finally tagged in XML to be machine readable. It's available on our platform or directly on the web or in Google Scholar, library catalogs around the world. We are also developing a research textual data repository hosted on a national computing infrastructure for text mining purposes and research using big data tools and methodologies. Those textual corpora comprises massive collections of historical publications of Canada and official reports on First Nations, for example, from national libraries, Canadian libraries, also published in French and English. As you can see on that map, our collections are intensively and increasingly consulted everywhere in the world because, yes, open access increases the usage of research outputs. Now, what about impact of open access to humanities and social sciences research on major societal challenges? To make this point here more concrete, I have some examples for you. Since we more carefully monitor the impact of our infrastructure at the request of the Canadian Foundation for Innovation, and I sincerely thank them for that because it was worth doing it, but it was not easy because when everything is in open access, how can you track the usage and the impact? But we found a way, and we discovered really interesting things. We've come across peer-reviewed articles disseminated on Érudit, cited in reports written by the First Nations in the context of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, a commission that aimed at recognizing the role of the Canadian government in systemic discrimination against Indigenous communities. We've also seen papers that have been published, that have been used by lawyers in court and that have contributed to change the justice system, especially regarding sexual abuse cases that have been on the forefront of the news with the Me Too movement, as you are all aware of it. And we've also identified an interesting phenomenon that happens in times of crisis, by which papers published sometimes years ago and not heavily used suddenly make their way on top of the list of the downloads. This has happened in the first months of the COVID-19 outbreak, and also last February when Russia invaded Ukraine. So articles on the Spanish flu, the stress virus, on the identity insecurity in Russia, and so on. This recurrent phenomenon illustrates well how open access to research can inform population in times of crisis, and by doing so, contribute to fight fake news. To conclude my examples, and as climate change crisis is certainly the biggest challenge humanity is facing, I want to say a few words in favor of humanities and social sciences research. As we all know, climate change is a natural phenomenon that is caused by human behaviors and that affects all communities of the world in very different ways, especially ones in the global south. However, it seems that we are today in a very critical situation where the growing body of scientific evidence on climate change does not influence enough the decisions of the leaders of the world. To understand this and to develop efficient strategy to have leaders listen and take action accordingly to science, we may need, in the coming years, more input from sociologists, philosophers, psychologists, political scientists, and so on, to better understand the human factors at play in the resistance to change that we are facing. Returning to Érudit and the research infrastructure, I think we can say that those infrastructures are very important, especially in light of the current state of the scholarly publication environment. Indeed, that sector is now, and has been for a long time, dominated by an oligopoly of 5 commercial entities that publish over 60% of all research outputs worldwide, and they are doing 30% profits annually also out of that research. This situation is problematic, as those publishers have a well-documented bias in favor of global north research topics, research in science, technology, and engineering, and also in favor of English as the unique scientific language. That situation leaves behind a huge portion of the world's research and researchers. However, similar infrastructure as Érudit exists, and they are numerous around the world, on all continents, as you can see. And the good news is they all share, more or less, the same technology, standards, interoperability protocols. So we can dream that increased international cooperation could lead to a discovery layer that could connect those resources, data, and increase impact, visibility, and also the influence of those infrastructure in the global scientific environment. However, to get there, the road is not easy. Those non-commercial infrastructures are often unstable or insufficient funding that lead them to compete for funds or recognition. And more importantly, there's a lack of international scientific diplomacy, or not enough scientific diplomacy, that is necessary to unite infrastructures beyond national and regional areas. And to conclude, I want to say that when I was in the plane reading the Brno Declaration on Fostering a Global Ecosystem of Research Infrastructures, I was really happy because that declaration addresses, if I get it right, among other critical points, precisely those two challenges, and it is, in my eyes, a first and important step in the good direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emily. You touched a very important point about opening publications, data for social sciences and humanities, which nowadays, with the challenges that we had, or at least we face in Europe about democracy and misinformation, is extremely important. And you also raised the issue about the monopolies or the lobbies that make it extremely difficult to do that. Nevertheless, despite the difficulties, you managed to go ahead. So what was the secret for that? We're trying to do in Europe. We are quite advanced in the sense that, of course, we have open repository for publications, we have obligations in our funding programs, but what was your experience and what was the turning point for you to go ahead?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to say that you're very good in Europe at this, but I think for us, well, we started in 1998, and I think we've started with a good basis. It started at the University of Montreal, and we started to, with developing, at that time it was not XML, it was another standard, but we started to structure the data. And then we developed the infrastructure, but also the services by developing partnerships. So we've developed our collections, our services, and now our governance body by building partnerships with all stakeholders around. It's a long road. It's not easy. It takes time. You have to understand each other. You have to see where you are complementary, where you're not, to be able to work and to work together in the same direction.
Mm-hmm. And what are your expectations from politicians in this context?
I think, okay, there's some funders of Érudit here. I will have to be careful. No. I think now we are in a good position because open science, open data, open access, it's recognized. You know, we all know the benefit of this. But I think a lot of putting in place that an environment is based on education. Mm-hmm. So I think policies is good, having infrastructure is a good thing, but then you have to have budgets to help libraries, universities, help researchers to change their practices,
yes.
To educate the students and so on. So I would like to see a recognition of that fundamental education part and budgets associated to that.
Very good, thank you. So money is always important, as we all know, but changing the mindset is also very important. Great, so now, Piyawut, is that correct? Is it better? Is the name correct? I'll show you on the stage. You show you on the stage, great. Please, you are coming now from the other side of the research and technology developments, high-performance computing. But I think it's not by coincidence you two are coming with a speech after Emily, because new technologies should take into consideration ethics and societal values as well, I think. So, Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. We'll see what I can do. All right, good. Well, first, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank ICRI for having me here. This is my first time to ICRI too, and that's the first time to Czech. Lovely cities. Okay, I know I'm in the impossible 7 minutes here, but since this is the first time and the voice for me and coming across the part of the world, I would like to spend short, quick minutes to introduce myself and what I do. Okay, my name is Piyawut SRICHAIKUL. Okay, I'm here on a capacity of ASEAN HPC Task Force co-chairs, and also I work for NSTDA Supercomputer Center or ThaiSC in Thailand. Okay. Okay. Well, currently I lead the small center of Supercomputer Center called ThaiSC. It's far right in the red circle. Okay. It's a new system with new organization structures under National Science Technology Development Agency or NSTDA. Okay, with only starting in 2019 with currently 7 permanent staff. ThaiSC is operate under the National Electronic and Computer Technology Center or NECTEC. Okay, on the left of your panels. Okay, with a highlight in red, which is a part of NSTDA and also belongs to the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research, and Innovations, the Kingdom of Thailand. If on the right, upper right corners, the ASEAN, the Assembly of Southeast Asian Nations, consists of 10 ASEAN member states, namely the Brunei, Cambodia, Laos, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. Okay. From now on, my talk might feel a bit out of place according to the session flow and titles, but instead of repeating the contribution of high-performance computing to the current data and digitization challenge, which has been said a lot during the past 2 days in ICRI, okay, which I certainly cannot do better than all the other renowned speakers. I would just simply put it aside and say high-performance computing or supercomputer is the research infrastructures which use as enabling tools when you working it right without the components. It's transform your data, all this in fast-growing data, into meaningful informations or abilities or tools which can return value back to the society and economics, AI included. Okay, so I will continue with focus rather on the collaboration. I would like to take you through the story of the journey of the recent EU and ASEAN cooperations in the field of HPCs. I'll start with ASEAN. ASEAN HPCs, I'm sorry if I'm reading script because I am. It's the only way that I can seem to get the time under the controls. The HPC facility in ASEAN are very limited. Why those numbers in this page may not be accurate or up to date nor exhaustive, but it does give you pretty much the ballpark figures. Okay, among 10 ASEAN member states, only Singapore has a petaflop scale system. And those numbers accumulated cannot even compare to what we hear in any single institutions in Europe under the Euro HPCs. There are only 3 ASEAN member states which provide national scale public service on HPCs, namely Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. Reflecting on the ASEAN HPC adoption challenge, okay. The major barrier is a high investment cost in operations, in investment and operation cost, sorry. On top of that, there are insufficient prerequisite skills and divergence of technical capabilities. However, on the plus side, HPCs now start gaining recognitions by ASEAN governments as the important infrastructure for science, technology, and innovation advancement. For example, in 2021, Singapore and Thailand government granted the investment for the new supercomputing system. These two systems, Aspire 2 in Singapore and Lanta in Thailand, are being implemented as we speak and shall be in operation by early next week. Early next year. Okay. The ASEAN look at the opportunity to grow through bilateral and multilateral partnerships with many other regions which have competencies and long history of expertise in HPCs, just like EU that we have. The ASEAN HPC initiative started in 2018 with the goal to achieve the ASEAN Chair HPC facility, which is common in Europe, but is not in ASEAN. The Committee on Science, Technologies and Innovations has commissioned the group of people called ASEAN HPC Task Force, consists of a technical expert in HPC or related fields from all 10 ASEAN member states, me included. What are the tasks? The tasks are explore technical configurations, requirements, and roadmap toward share RI in facility in HPCs, and also to be an ASEAN's point of contact for regional collaboration in HPC areas. And as soon as the task force started, we realized that human capacity development and also meaningful application which benefit society and economics are our added challenge inevitably. The task force come up with the technical configurations, but as you know, when there's no fund to implement, we sought alternative. In this part, the words collaboration come to rescue. We, at this stage, currently, we use an institutional collaboration, MOU, between Singapore A-Star and Japan RICONS to allow a trial stage of using resource outside ASEAN as a pilot for ASEAN chair HPC facilities. If this can be proven working, why not anywhere else, right? Okay, these are summarized the page timeline that we have been working on, and these are detailed statistics of the project currently run on the trial process. The trial will end in the middle of next year. Perhaps a review and consideration on how to move forward will be considered. Okay. All right, I want to move on the ASEAN and EU cooperation journeys. EU has long accumulated experience in regional resource sharing in Europe, training capacity, and experience with applying killer applications, so to speak. And we did receive a good signal of collaboration opportunity from EU within these areas. We grabbed it, and with the effort of ERADI's program, the EU ERADI programs, the dialogue of HPCs fall under the activity of research infrastructures. In 2019, after 2 consecutive meetings at EU-ASEAN HPC coordination group in Singapore and Luxembourg, followed by the visiting to Barcelona Supercomputing Center summer school, the first decisions in activities to make is to bring the HPC school to ASEAN for the very first time. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you excuse me because we only
yes.
have 10 minutes if you can try to conclude.
Yes,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Due to COVID outbreak, the first school was held 100% in virtuals. During the July 5th to 9th in last year, 2021, there were nearly 300 applicants and 58 participating students attending with the ratio of gender distribution of 63/37. 24 lectures and 14 invited speakers from Europe, from EU, Japan, and ASEAN. The school was considered successful, and that leads to the second school to be held in a couple of months from now, from 5 to 10 of December, in Bangkok, Kasetsart University. Okay. There were nearly 300 applicants from all ASEAN member states. 70 students were accepted, and 28 lecturers and 10 invited speakers are from EU, Japan, USA, and ASEAN. Again, we have the same, pretty much the same gender distribution between participants. Okay, I'll go briefly all this without going through, but you will see some of the participating agencies from EU research infrastructures like LUMI, Melaxinas, Euro HPC joint undertakings, and also Master for HPCs. Okay. Oh, there's more information on the web. Another thing I point out, the starting of the EU-ASEAN collaboration in HPC is also open up for other tiers of collaborations. From the school, you see their contribution from Japan, and including a 2 successful joint symposiums during a Supercomputing Asia in this year and last year. Okay, lesson learned. Okay, this is a new page I just pointed in myself. If I learned anything at all, there are 4 keywords that I observed a lot during this conference, and actually quite nearly a year in every other places. They are ecosystem, societal challenge, collaboration, and sustainability. Crossing that with my experience during the past few years with the research infrastructure in HPC in Thailand and ASEAN, these are my observations, and these are my own personal view alone, not reflecting the organization's opinions. The HPC ecosystem in ASEAN is not well established. Definitely there are no connection between policies, funders, operators, and users. Most of the work done right now in ASEAN are from bottom up, okay? There's no clear dot connecting all of them together. And the one thing also find out after working with this group of users, the HPC system, regardless of large or small, they are irrelevant if there are no user and no meaningful usage that can produce some meaningful result. Okay. Collaboration has proven to fill in the gap here and there. These are not simple tasks. And sustainability, especially long-term sustainability, every time I propose anything to someone bigger than me, there's a question that I have to answer, and it's not something that's going to be achieved in a short time period. Try to analyze what are the common parameters among that. Sorry. So I'll jump to the conclusions. Okay, 2 words. If I have more questions, I'll elaborate more. I think the keywords to sustainability, you have to invest in people, because people are the common factors in all those 4 keywords. And there has to be a torch passing from generation to generation over time. And bring it back to the session titles. Collaborations is the key, and collaboration in itself is a grand challenge. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is a great example of collaboration at the international level that fills in the gaps and the need to develop the human capacity as well. So because we are late, I go directly to Tommaso, who is going to present us what quantum technologies can bring us in this data discussion.
Thank you. So I would like to ask, please, the technical services to not put my slides there, because I was inspired by the talk of our Deputy Prime Minister to just ditch my presentation, and I re-improvised it completely. So can you please switch off my presentation, because I want to tell you something else. And the reason is that he pulled out of his pocket something which I also have in my pocket, yes? And many of you have, and maybe you don't realize that this is something which is only possible if you can understand and manipulate the laws of quantum mechanics. So this is quantum technology of the first quantum revolution. Everybody has it. But something which I have in my other pocket, which you do not know that exists, this is a Samsung Galaxy Quantum. It is the first consumer electronic device based on quantum technologies of the second quantum revolution. You can only buy it in Korea, and unfortunately, it contains a chip which is 2.5 millimeter square chip, photonics. It manipulates single photons. It was invented, developed, and produced in Europe, it was industrialized in South Korea. So this is something which, with our infrastructure, we want to avoid that it happens again, in the sense that we want to make sure that the value, both in terms of knowledge and in terms of enablement of knowledge, that comes from here is also produced and leads to value creation here. So what does it matter for data and digitalization, which is on this very wonderful board? Well, we have data which we want to share, for sure, a lot, and more and more and more. How do we process that? We also have some data which we rather would not share, like your credit card number or your medical records. How do we protect that? How do we differentiate? So it happens that quantum technologies can answer both of those questions, in the sense that the second quantum revolution, as I mentioned, here in my left pocket, I have per bit, per 0 and 1, I have hundreds of electrons. On the optical fibers in the internet, I have hundreds of photons per bit. Now here in my right pocket, and in quantum technologies of the second revolution, you have one photon, one electron, one atom, one quantum per bit. What does it mean? If I transmit information, okay, let's assume that there is some external agency, such as, I don't know, the National Security Agency. They would like to hear what you are discussing, you know, through your presumably secret communication. How do you do that? Well, you know, 100 photons, I take a couple of them, nobody notices, I will know whether my photon pulse is open or switched on or switched off, whether it is 0 or 1. So I can intercept. Now, if I send you a single photon, you know, a photon is a quantum, you cannot split it in half. So either you take it, or you try to look at it, but you disturb it, so the legitimate parties of the communication can know whether it has been tampered with. So it is secure not by some algorithms, it is secure by the laws of nature. And the first infrastructure that we are creating at European level is EuroQCI, European Quantum Communication Infrastructure, which is for enabling secure communications of those data which our citizens want to keep secure in a way which cannot be intercepted. This is also the basis of a research infrastructure because, you know, on the same kind of technology, you have also quantum metrology, which is one of the other aspects of the big initiative that we have at European level with quantum technologies. And you can, for instance, connect the different metrology institutes and provide timestamping, and provide secure, really basis for a lot of scientific research. Now, this is for communication. Now for computing, lots of data, how do I do that? Well, now, if I manipulate individual quanta, what does it happen? I mean, a classical bit is 0 or 1. Let's say that I am in a labyrinth. You know, I got a phone call a few months ago from DHL, and they wanted to know how can I use a quantum computer. Why are they interested? Because, you know, when you are in a labyrinth, you want to get out, or you have to deliver your packages in the best possible way. Now you say, okay, now I go right. Let me try, I hit a wall. I come back, I say, maybe it was better to go left. But I can do this only one time after the other. Now, if I have quantum systems, individual atoms, which I can manipulate and control, I can go left and right at the same time. I can explore my labyrinth, I can explore all my data in my system in one go, with very massive parallelism. Now, what is the infrastructure I mentioned there? Well, we also want to make it available for society, in this case, much more for scientific research and also industrial research. So really, these first quantum computers are going to be located. We had 2 weeks ago, there was the announcement, I think it was one day before the announcement of the first Nobel Prize, which went to quantum technologies, by the way, in history. So the day after, I think, the European Commission, with perfect timing, announced the 6 hosting sites for quantum computers, which will be coupled with supercomputers, and this will be made available on the cloud in an open way such that everybody, scientists, it's really a research infrastructure because these are big machines, like accelerators if you wish, and then this will be made available to users from science and from industry in order to develop new methods to solve problems for society. And now, I know that you're looking that I have only 2 minutes, but I have one thing to
you
say.
You can have even 2. I hope the organizers allow us to take a little bit of minutes.
A little bit of minutes. Okay. Anyway, I have only 2 minutes. Okay. You may have questions afterwards. So, you know, we have these quanta. We want to make them. We want to avoid that, you know, someone else comes and takes the ideas that we have here in Europe and makes money out of them elsewhere. It happens with the web, invented in Geneva, and all the cash is elsewhere. So such that, for instance, Google now can invest hundreds of millions in quantum computing, which our industry cannot. So in any case, we want to make sure that these things, these ideas, which originated from Europe, and 2 of the 3 Nobel laureates are Europeans, get industrialized in Europe. So how do we do that? I mentioned this chip. So this chip is something which, you know, can be industrialized over there, because as we know, the production capability for chips are not so much here in Europe. And now there is a CHIPS Act, and thanks to the Czech presidency, they very thankfully reinstated, you know, quantum chips and infrastructures for testing, developing, and production and pilots for quantum chips in the text of the CHIPS Act. We had a meeting last week in the European Parliament with Vice President Vestager and all the rapporteurs for all the different parties, and we will have, you know, also this in the context of what we are developing as a big, we started with a quantum flagship, it was 1 billion euros, now it is 7.5 billion euros, now we want to increase it a little bit into a quantum fleet in which we have all the infrastructure components to not only develop the ideas, but reap the benefits, make them industrial, and offer them for the benefit of researchers and society alike. I think 7 minutes I did it. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Oh.
Very good. So, but this is the beauty of this panel. One inspires the others, and I would like to benefit a bit on what you said, because of course there is a lot of discussions about the role of research infrastructures, how far they can go towards collaboration with industry, what is the role of technology infrastructures, and your example demonstrates that we have to use all the means and all the ways so that what is developed in Europe through a scientific work, through research work, is produced in Europe, is transferred to the market, and could be capitalized for the technologically development in Europe and for the economic development in Europe at the end.
And I must say that I am very pleased to have this discussion in this country, because this will only work if it has a pan-European dimension. This was the first question which Commissioner Oettinger asked me when I presented to him the first ideas now 6 years ago. So if it would be just the big and strong in terms of gross national product and in terms of research system, such as, I don't know, Germany, France, the big countries, we would not make it. It is going to work, this infrastructure which we discussed, only if it is pervasive, if it benefits everyone, and if it is supported by all member states, in order also to bring the benefit back. So these, for instance, these hosting sites of supercomputers and quantum computers, they are going to be located in very many countries, and 3 of them are small countries, 3 out of 6. And a couple of them, 2 of them are widening countries. And so this is extremely essential, and this is also a central message, and the reason why I think also politically that the Czech presidency was able to support this, because really it is something which we can only do if we are all together, and this is really a broad common acknowledgement. It works only if you have a unified strategy, and actually it works bottom up, because often there is a discussion like, you know, the Commission is want to impose something onto member states and they have to align. No, in this case, really, it came from the scientific community in all countries, and then we managed to bring it up to the Commission. So there is a synergy that we have to build upon, and this is the right place to discuss it.
Would you like to say something? I see you're ready
just
to react.
Just a fasting, because we've got Canadian colleagues and out of Europe colleagues. I still believe, and it's shown us not only during this war in Ukraine, right, that there is existing division of, let's say, democratic world and shared values communities, which is not only US and Canada and European countries, it's all the way. But then we have competitors, and we have to say we do have enemies from that point of view. So there will be always concurrency between North America and Europe, of course. That's why we reopen through TCC that cooperation that also goes over the ocean, with a different approach to, let's say, how to use the data. It's more of a business-like approach, or European more of the citizen approach, right? If we balance that, we also combine it, but in particular matters such as science or whatever, I believe that the race is good between Europe and US in that particular way, because it speeds up. Obviously, if the business is involved, over the seas countries got much power. For US can push as much money as they decide on a business level to that. So in that particular matter, this little bit pan-European protectivism makes sense, right? Because it's speeding up both countries, and that cooperation is very important. We have to say that. And one more thing, and you mentioned that, yeah, we could speak a lot about it. What I do like is, again, also we kind of are proud countries within the Europe, and we rather have this particular factory or facility here. And I believe we would agree that let's play the fair distribution of those centers, not only for the quantum computing, right? We can say, okay, data chip factory would be here. I'm very proud, and I had a chance to be on USPA event last week, Space Week, and it's so important to have that share of a small country, Czech Republic, on a space research, here Brno of a cybersec on a European level of expertise, and let's divide that as well as, you know, within the countries that are member states, which also makes everyone to be happy to participate, even though we somehow raise also, should we be the center of excellence for AI? No, this should be that country, but I believe even with that approach, European Commission and EU as is, it's working on that. Let's place it here because it brings scientists to, it makes a hub, obviously, that makes companies to invest in the region. The education is adjusted to having whatever quantum computing facility over here, chip factory over there. That is very important, that we also benefit of that, having it on the place of the country.
Thank you very much, and I think it's time now first to go for coffee, but then to continue your discussions during coffee. But I would like to conclude this very interesting session by saying data are important in the digitalized society. They have to be as open as possible, as closed as necessary. They are important for social and humanities. They are important for research infrastructures, and new technologies like HPC and quantum could play an important role, not just to analyze better the data, to make better use of the data, to share the data, but also to make them more secure. There is an important role for politicians to work close with the researchers in order to ensure that the new technologies, they reach the market, they reach the European economy. Nevertheless, new technologies under fair conditions is something to be discussed at international level as well. And this is also important. This is why we are having an international conference today. But we have to make clear that the collaboration with international partners are based on fair conditions and are based on shared values as well, in particular when we're talking about scientific collaboration. I hope you agree with this. So I would like to thank all of you. I would like to thank all of you for these excellent interventions, for the active discussions, and looking forward to follow up the discussions during the coffee break. And of course, last but not least, we are the ceremonies at the end of this ICRI conference. Thank you very much, and let's go to the coffee.